there's only one question that needs to be asked. Somebody walks up to you and they say, well, I don't know what's going on. I understand these concepts conceptually. You seem to be understanding it differently. How can I experience these concepts? I just kind of get it mentally. Every time that person says I, they're recreating their memory of who they have been as I, their separate image of who they have been as I. So you won't be able to experience it until you die. That's like what Craig said from God Love Life, that guy, wonderful Jamaican Craig, said you have to die in order for God to live. So you won't be able to get it conceptually. Work on removing this you from your head, this idea of you, which doesn't exist. Instead, every time that you start thinking, just take your attention back to this present moment. Zen Buddhism, that's why Zen Buddhism is so wonderful. If you've read anything or seen anything about Zen Buddhism, if you go to a Zen Buddhist monk and you walk up to him and you say, oh, tell me something about Buddhism, tell me what is this, what's Dharma, what's it, they'll say, oh, look how wonderful the sky is, look how blue the sky is. And they'll continue doing this until you get the point, which is that you're only supposed to be aware of what is right in front of you. Because everything else is an illusion, it's a samskara. Hello. So, self-inquiry is really not a matter of finding someone and bringing it towards you, finding a new person and bringing it towards you. It's a matter of letting go of me. Sri Ramana Maharishi, one of the most prolific Indian sages of the 20th century, excuse me. He dedicated his life to this practice, self-inquiry, and to his instruction, self-inquiry. He has a book on Enlightened Awareness. I put the ebook on there. You should check it out, really. After reading it, I attained samadhi. It's a wonderful book. In this method of self-inquiry, you have to continually ask the question, who am I? Over and over again, who am I? Every time you're having separation in your mind or anxiety or any of these other emotions which are just linked to past ideas of who you are and what you're supposed to be doing or what you're supposed to be. There is no separate you, there is only the earth, everything. Anyway, the book that I mentioned is Be As You Are by Sri Ramana Maharishi. It's on Enlightened Awareness, the website. If you go to Divine Alignment and then click on the second one that pops down from that, the second subtopic would be Who Am I? And then it says parentheses Technique for Enlightenment. And at the bottom there's the ebook on the bottom. It's wonderful. I should just read a little bit of the book here. It would be so good. So let me give me a second. I'll just pop this up. Because he really does cover it all. It's so simple and so wonderful. let's see, the self. This is the term that he used the most frequently. He defined it by saying the real self or real I, contrary to perceptible experience, not an experience of individuality, but a non-personal, all-inclusive awareness. It is not to be confused with the individual self, which he said was essentially non-existent, being a fabrication of the mind which obscures the true experience of the real self. He maintained that the real self is always present and always experienced, but he emphasized that one is only consciously aware of it as it is really is when the self-limiting tendencies of the mind have ceased. Permanent and continuous self-awareness is known as self-realization. Here is a question asked to Sri Ramana Maharishi: what is reality? Reality must always be real. It is not with forms and names. That which underlies these is the reality. It underlies limitations, being itself limitless. It is not bound. It underlies unrealities, itself being real. Reality is that which is. It is as it is. It transcends speech. It is beyond the expression, existence, non-existence, etc. The reality, which is the mere consciousness that remains when the ignorance is destroyed along with the knowledge of objects, alone is the self, Atma. In that Brahma, Swapura, real form of the Brahman, which is abundant self-awareness, there is not the least ignorance. The reality which shines fully without misery and without a body, not only when the world is known, but also when the world is not known, is your real form. The radiance of consciousness bliss, in the form of one awareness shining equally within and without, is the supreme and blissful primal reality. Its form is silence, and it is declared by the jnanis to be final and unobstructable state of true knowledge, jnana. Know that jnana alone is non-attachment, enlightenment, non-attachment. Jnana alone is purity. Enlightenment alone is purity. Jnana is the attainment of God. Jnana is that which is devoid of forgetfulness of self. Alone is immortality. Jnana alone is everything. The next question fielded to Sri Ramana Maharishi was, what is this awareness and how can one obtain and cultivate it? The answer: you are awareness. Awareness is another name for you. Since you are awareness, there's no need to attain or cultivate it. All that you have to do is to give up being aware of other things that is not self. If one gives up being aware of them, then pure awareness alone remains, and that is the self. This is how beautifully simple that enlightenment really is. Knowing who you are, know thyself. This is it. The only difference between an enlightened being and a non-enlightened being. An enlightened being knows who they are. If the self itself is aware, then why am I not aware of it even now? Answer: there is no duality. Your present knowledge is due to the ego and only relative. Relative knowledge requires a subject and an object, whereas awareness of the self is absolute and requires no object. Remembrance also is simply relative, requiring object to be remembered and a subject to remember. When there is no duality, who is to remember whom? The self is ever present. Each one wants to know the self.